Hi and welcome to today's vlog. Today I am going to be talking you through my personal independence payment renewal reapplication. So I have talked on this channel before about PIP, I've talked about telephone assessments, I have talked about how to fill the forms out, and it's been a few years, I think it's been 4 years since I last applied, so I thought it was a good time to update you, redo the video and just give you all the tips and tricks I've learned along the way. So let's get into it.
She likes oversharing with outfits and swearing, admiring her tats while she plays with all her cats. Her disability gives her superpower, agility to holiday and live the right way. Estelosaurus.
So 2020 was the last time that I had to reapply for my personal independence payment. It was during COVID. I then had to have a telephone assessment and I was then granted it until now. My current award runs out on the 18th of April, except it kind of doesn't. So I received a text message from the Department of Work and Pensions more than a few weeks ago, to tell me that my PIP was up for renewal and that they were sending me the forms in the post. A couple of weeks later, I still had not received those forms in the post, and I knew that my award was potentially going to be stopped on the 18th of April. So I phoned them on the telephone number, which I will link below, but just for reference, it's 0800 121 4433. I called that number and I was on hold for around 90 minutes. I will say, if you are going to be calling the Department of Work and Pensions, be prepared for a long time to wait for someone to answer the phone. I sat and watched TV whilst I was waiting for them to answer the phone. Definitely give yourself something else to do whilst you're waiting for them to answer the phone, because it can take a really long time and it's very frustrating, and the longer you wait, the more frustrated you can become, and I think sometimes if you're a little bit frustrated, it can be harder to get your point across effectively. So anyway, that's just a little tip for you if you have to phone them. Long story short, after being on hold for 90 minutes, I spoke to someone and I explained that I still hadn't received the form. She said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, you've got until the 18th of April. And I said, "Great, but I haven't had the forms yet and we've got a bank holiday coming up. What do you want me to do about it?" So she said, "Don't worry, we'll resend you the forms and we'll extend your deadline to the end of April." Brilliant, I said. So I waited another nearly 2 weeks for the forms to come. If I was a cynical person, I might suggest that maybe they never sent the forms in the first place, but who are we to know? That's a guess. I don't know. I'm sure they're not inherently bad people. So anyway, I now have the forms. This is just a reapplication. It's much easier than filling out those initial, like when you first have to apply. The reapplication form is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to fill this form out. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, how I do it, give you some tips and tricks, and if you've got any questions, you can let me know. So let's get into it. My first tip is, every time you have to reapply, keep a copy of your answers. It's just really useful to know what you've said. It's really useful to basically copy them if you need to. Filling out these forms can be just such a ball ache. And if you've got something that you can look back on and just copy if you need to, for a lot of people, things haven't changed. So you're just kind of writing the same thing again and again. So if you keep a copy of your previous answers, it can just make it a little bit easier for you to fill out. The other thing I suggest that you do is, I'm not going to show you the front of it because it's got all my personal details on, but from your GP surgery, you can request what they call a patient summary. And on that patient summary, it will list all of your major sort of active problems. It will list any active minor problems, and it will also list your medications and just things like that, allergies, vaccinations. So basically it's just a very short summary of your patient record, which can really help when you're filling out these PIP forms. You can also, if needs be, include it as evidence. I'm not going to, I've just got this list so I can remember some of the dates of surgeries, some of the official diagnosis, names, that kind of thing. So yeah, I would highly recommend getting yourself down to the GP and asking for a patient summary. It's free. It shouldn't cost you anything. If they shouldn't do, but just in case, it's free. It's not going to cost you anything to get a patient summary. They may ask you for ID to prove who you are. So if you are going to go and collect a patient summary from your GP, make sure you take some form of ID just in case they ask for it. So the first couple of pages of the form just basically are a little bit of information. The front page tells you once you've filled the form in what's going to happen. So it says they'll look at your form and any information that you've sent. They'll write to you when they've made their decision. We may call you if we have any questions, and we will write to you if we need you to attend a consultation with a health professional. Then it says you do not need to contact us unless you have other changes that you need to tell us about. And then here it says telling us about any changes. If your condition or circumstances change, you should always let us know straight away. So this is for major changes. If you're just starting a new medication, chances are you don't need to tell them. Basically, they're just reviewing to make sure that you're on the right award, that you still need to be on the award, and if there've been any major changes, do you need to increase or decrease that award? So basically, on this form, you aren't telling them in detail about your disabilities, your existing disabilities and issues, because in theory, this is a reapplication and they already know about them. This form is just for you to tell them about anything that has changed since your last award. Then on the first page we have this sort of like a how-to example page, which is quite useful. So it says completing the award review form. This form is for you to tell us how you carry out the 12 daily living and mobility activities, and if anything has changed since we last awarded you PIP. What has changed? When did it happen? Is it easier or harder to do things now, or have things stayed the same? So this is the kind of things they're looking for. Do you need to use any aids? By this we mean objects that make activities easier. For example, button hooks when getting dressed, perching stools, adapted taps, etc. If you're getting the help you need, do you need more or less help now? So yeah, again, they're just looking to see what has changed, if you need more help or less help. And then if you need supervising to do something safely, tell us what might happen if you weren't supervised. And then they've got an example question here for preparing food and cooking. And it says, tell us if something has changed and approximately when. Tell us how you manage this activity now, including the use of any aids that you need. Tell us about any changes to the help you need or the help you get from another person. And then there's an example. It says any information, not just medical, about how your condition or disability affects you is really useful. To support your answers, you can also send in the following information. So recent clinical reports, prescription lists, care plans, carers' diaries, carers' letters. So if you do have carers and things like that, if you can ask them just to keep a daily diary of what they do for you, that can be used as evidence. You can also remove this very front sheet. It doesn't need to go back with the form. So the next page, it just tells you about information that you need to send. So it says send us any information that you've received since your last award, for example, a summary of your patient records. So this patient summary, hospital discharges or outpatient letters, your current repeat prescription list, and then you can send reports or care and treatment plans from consultants, social workers, community teams, nurses, learning disability support teams, physiotherapists, carers, family members. So anyone that looks after you or helps care for you, you can also include reports, diaries, letters, etc. from them. You can also include test results, so scans, diagnostics, tests, anything like that. There is quite a lot of evidence you can send. It does also say you should not send appointment letters or cards. So if you had an appointment letter, you don't need to send that. Supporting letters from your GP, letters for hospital admissions, general information or fact sheets about your condition, fact sheets about medication, information about tests you're going to have, bus or train tickets to appointments you've attended, or any information you've sent us before. So I generally, personally, for me, don't include any of this information. If they want it, they can contact my consultants and GPs for it. My disability, I've had since birth. I've been on DLA and PIP in its varying forms for the majority of my life. They already have all of my information. They know all about my disability, and every time I reapply, I explain it all again. This time I'm not sending any supporting information. That's a personal choice for me though. You feel free to send anything and everything you've got, and 9 times out of 10, the more information you can send them, the better. It's not as important for these renewals because they've already got the information. This is just what's changed, so you only kind of need to include information on what has changed. So don't worry too much about existing things that they already know about unless they have changed significantly. So hopefully that all makes sense. Next page then is a little bit about how to complete the award. So it says step 1, remove the letters and information from the front of this form. So all these front pages can be removed, you don't need to take them, and you should keep them safe because it's got all the information you need, plus the contact numbers to call, plus things like your national insurance number. That's got all of that on there. Keep it safe so that if you need it whilst you're waiting for your award to come through, you've got it to hand. It says read through the form and the information sheet. Read through the form fully before you fill it in. If you've still got your last award letter, read it again to remind you how we've previously assessed your needs. So I mentioned that right at the start. If you've got all your old paperwork and your old award letters, just have a little look through them and remind yourself of what came previously. Complete the form, answer all the questions, use the information sheet to help you, and remember to sign the declaration. Don't forget to sign the form when you've finished. Collect all your supporting information and return your completed form and copies of your supporting information in the envelope provided. Make sure the address shows through the window. So they do include an envelope for you to send it back in as well. So let's get on to the paperwork. So when you start filling these forms out, my first major tip, and it says this on the form anyway, always use black ink. Don't use blue ink, don't use red ink, don't use purple ink. Use black ink to complete the form. I will say I personally prefer to write in capital letters throughout the whole form because I just think my writing is a little bit easier to read when it's all out in capital letters. I would say if you have neat handwriting, go ahead, crack on with it. Maybe if you don't, consider writing in capitals, or if you think your handwriting is completely unreadable or for whatever reason you are unable to write, please get someone else to fill the form for you. That's absolutely fine if somebody else handwrites the form for you, as long as they're your words. It doesn't matter who completes the form. You can also get in touch with like your local Citizens Advice Bureau or any local disability support groups, because they can also help you fill these forms out, and they're more than happy to help you. And I'll leave a link below to some pages where you might be able to find some help if you need it to fill out the forms. The first couple of pages are just basic information: name, signature, telephone number, age, profession, that kind of thing. So the first couple of pages are pretty straightforward to fill in. You also have to agree to let them contact. You also have to consent for them to contact your GP and other health professionals, so don't forget to tick this box. You don't have to give them consent to speak to your GP, but obviously it will help. So I recommend consenting to let them contact your health professional. So this first page is where you can fill in the information, contact details for who you want to be your named health professional. So I would say in here, pick either your GP or your main consultant or healthcare professional that looks after you and that would know the most about you. So if you have a specialist nurse for your condition, if you're under a specific consultant for your specific condition, you can pop their details in, or you can just pop your GP details in. Because I have so many conditions and illnesses, I am just putting my GP in because they have that basic overview. I've got lots of different consultants and specialist nurses. I'm not about to put them all in here. If you want to, you can separately, on a separate piece of paper, include all of their contact details, should you so wish. I personally am not going to bother. And then you just have to tick to give them consent to contact those people. You can withdraw that consent at any time, and there is a number to call. It's the same main number. You can just call that number to withdraw your consent for them to speak to your healthcare professionals, should you so wish. But personally, I would say it is very useful for them to be able to contact your health professionals, because they can give an overview or just provide more backup supporting evidence if needed. So that's sort of the first page, the first bit you fill in, and you have to sign the declaration on the first page as well. So section 2, the next pages are about your health condition or disability. So in here, they want you to tell them about any current health conditions or disabilities you have. So it says include existing conditions and any new conditions since we last looked at your award on the 22nd of December 2020. So on this page, they just basically want a list of everything that's wrong with you. They also want a list of your medication, which, if you don't know it off the top of your head, you can obtain a repeat prescription from your GP surgery, and that repeat prescription will tell you all the medications you're on, the dosages and the frequency, so you can list all of those. And then there's a section to tell them about any treatments, therapies or surgeries. These are just since your last award, so you don't need to tell them about lifetime ones that you've had, just any surgeries you've had since your last award. I have had, I think, 4 or 5 surgeries since my last award, so I'll be listing all of those. It also asks you to list any hospital admissions since your last award. Again, I will be listing all of my new since 2020 hospital admissions on here as well. So that's the next thing to do. You can also include discharge papers and treatment plans as evidence for this part as well. So, I don't know, you might find it easier to write everything out in pencil first, or write it somewhere else first before you put it on the form. So if you want to double check your spelling, your handwriting, your wording of anything, it is worth writing it in pencil first, or writing it somewhere else first, or talking it through with someone before writing it down. So those are just a couple of tips should you need that extra assistance. I've gone straight in with a pen because I'm a maverick, but I would say, yeah, write it in pencil first, write it down somewhere else first, talk it through with someone else first, or, you know, get help, like I said before, from Citizens Advice or some disability support networks. So the next section is how your health condition or disability affects you. So we're going to go through each of the 12 activities of daily living now, and it's going to just basically ask you questions about each one of those and whether or not things have changed. So the first question is about preparing food and cooking. The second question is eating and drinking. Then we've got managing treatments, taking medication and monitoring your health condition. Then we've got washing and bathing, managing toilet needs or incontinence, dressing and undressing, speaking to people, hearing and understanding what they say, reading and understanding signs, symbols and written words, mixing with other people, making decisions about spending and managing money, planning and following routes, moving around, and that's it. Then there is a final section, question 13, is there anything else you think we should know about your health condition or disability? I'll come to that last, because it's last. I always say when you are completing these forms, completing these assessments, tell them about your worst day. So whatever is your worst day, make that your baseline, because if your condition fluctuates, chances are they're going to look at your good days rather than your bad days. So I would always say base your answers on your worst days. It does say here, if the effects of your health condition can change, for example, during the day or from day to day or from week to week, you should include as much detail as you can about that. So for example, if you're going to be, the more you do, the worse you are, then write that down. You should try to answer all of the questions. They don't like it if there are blank spaces and gaps, so I would say try to fill in every single question. If you run out of space, you can use additional paper. Just make sure that you write your name and national insurance on each additional sheet, and then make sure you're telling them which question you're answering on that extra sheet should you need to. So I'm going to go ahead now and start filling this out. So for preparing food and cooking, it says tell us if something has changed and approximately when. Tell us how you manage this activity now, including the use of any aids that you need. Tell us about any changes to the help you need or the help you get from another person. Now for me, preparing food and cooking hasn't changed too much. I do need a little bit more help moving things around, moving things out of our kitchen, carrying hot drinks, carrying hot food. So I'm just gonna write that down now. Now, for example, nothing has changed eating and drinking wise. I still eat and drink as normal. So I have just written here no changes because there are no changes. If there have been no changes to the questions, I would just write no changes. Don't waste your time writing things again if you don't feel you want to. Feel free to put information in here should you wish, but I've just put no changes because there have been no changes. These forms I think are stressful enough without overcomplicating things for yourself. My next top tip is take a break. Don't leave these forms to the last minute. Give yourself plenty of time to fill them out. Give yourself, a couple of hours to sit down and do this. Don't rush. Whilst you're completing it, don't be afraid to take breaks. It's a stressful and irritating process, so be kind to yourself whilst you are completing these forms. I've just been and got myself a cup of tea just to sort of stop for a minute. I think that's a really valuable tip when you are completing these forms. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to do it. Don't miss those deadlines. Don't risk your PIP being stopped. Give yourself plenty of time to do it, and when you do come to complete the forms, make sure you give yourself like a little break, a little treat whilst you're doing it. When I completed the last form, I took pictures of each page and saved it on my iPad, so I'm just looking at what I said last time to give myself an idea of what I need to write this time. It's really helpful, and it really takes the pressure off trying to sort of remember or think about what you should write, because it's kind of all here for you already. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you are going to be completing these forms, keep a copy of your answers, because it's so much more helpful when you come to do it again. So for questions 4 and 5, which are about washing and bathing and managing toilet needs and incontinence, since 2020 things have changed in both of those areas, so I've completed the boxes for those. So I've told them what changed, how I manage it now, and if I need any help. So I'm kind of on the last question now, which is moving around, which for me is the biggest part of my disability and the biggest part of why I get PIP. A lot of the questions, sort of the reading and understanding, mixing with people, managing money, I am okay with those kinds of things. I don't really need help. The only thing I have mentioned is that because I do suffer from both ocular, vestibular and hemiplegic migraines, when I am under attack, I do have difficulty reading and understanding things, so I have made a note of that. From experience, they tend to not really take that into account for migraines, but I've put it anyway because it does affect me, so we'll see what they say. But the last section now is moving around. So the first question for this part is how far can you walk, and it says to give you an idea of distance, 50 meters is approximately 5 buses parked end to end. And then it says, can you walk less than 20 meters, between 20 and 50 meters, between 50 and 200 meters, and between 200 meters and more. Now, since my last assessment, I can walk less than 20 meters, so that for me is kind of still the same. In fact, it's probably worse now, which is a shame. So the next question is, do you need to use an aid or assistance from another person to help you walk? Tick the boxes that apply to you. So sometimes we've got no, sometimes I need an aid, sometimes I need assistance, I always need aid, I always need assistance. So I'm putting that I need an aid and I need an assistance because I use a wheelchair now. My husband pushes that for me. So it says, tell us how you manage this activity now, including the use of any aids that you need. Now, on my last question, I put that I occasionally require a wheelchair or crutches. If we leave the house now and I have to walk more than 20 meters, I have to use my wheelchair. So that's what I'm going to put. The last bit here is the Motability Scheme. It says the Motability Scheme allows disabled people to lease a car, scooter or powered wheelchair in exchange for some or all of their mobility payments. If you're eligible to join the Motability Scheme, would you like us to post your information about any help they can offer you? If you tick the box, all they're going to do is send you information about Motability. So if you want some information about Motability, tick the box. If you don't, tick that box. I do not want to join the Motability scheme because I do not want to drive. If you do decide that you want information and then change your mind in the future, you can just give them a ring and retract that. So the last question is kind of the biggie, and this is where you've got your chance to really sell yourself. Think of it as like your personal statement in a CV. This is where you're going to put your sort of the real information, how your disability really affects you. That's what I'm going to put in here. You should also put in here anything you're awaiting treatment for. So if you're awaiting for a surgery, if you're awaiting a diagnosis, if you're awaiting a specific treatment, this is also a good place to make a note of that on this last section. I really like to go all out in this last section because I think it's the best chance you've got to really explain how your disability affects you. I've now completed the form. I've added my supporting information. Section 4 is your final checklist, and it asks you to tick the boxes when you have done. So I've signed my declaration, yes. I've answered all the questions, yes. And then it says included photocopies of supporting information with this form, yes. And then it says to send this form and your supporting information back to us in the envelope provided. This should have come with your paperwork. On the back of this form, you will see the address to return it to. So address is on the very back there. Place it in the envelope provided so it shows through the window. It does not need a stamp. Remember to include your supporting information. What happens next? We may call you if we've got any questions about the information on the form. We will write to you if we need you to attend a consultation with the health professionals. That's if you need a further telephone, face-to-face or video assessment. And then it says we'll write to you when we've made our decision on your award. And then there's just a little bit at the bottom about GDPR. So I'm going to take off these front pages now that don't need to be returned to them. These are the ones I said just to keep for information at the start. So I'm getting rid of those. I mean, you can leave them on there, but I think they're helpful for you to keep for information. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photograph of each of the pages so that I remember for future what I said this time. So I'm going to do that next, and I'm going to pop it in the envelope. So let's take some pictures, and I'm just using my iPad to take these pictures. I could use my phone, but I don't want these pictures on my phone. My iPad photos aren't connected to my phone photos, and the iPad doesn't leave the house, so it's just kind of an easy place to keep them. But however you want to take a copy. If you can photocopy them or scan them or whatever works for you. So there we go. I've taken a picture of all the pages, and that's just my way of keeping a record of what I've taken. Like I said, photocopy them, scan them, whatever works for you. Just make sure you've got a copy of it. That's, I think, just really important. You can then put your form, completed form. Just going to double check that I've signed it. Yep. And then we're going to pop this form in this envelope. Now this address should line up with the hole in the envelope, I'm hoping. So that has gone into the envelope. I'm going to take the envelope shut. And here it is ready to go. It is a free post address. It is in an already addressed stamped envelope, so you can just chuck it in the post box. I think if you wanted to, you could send it by recorded delivery. Just you know what the post is like these days, and if they say you never sent it back and they stop your award, I guess if you send it by recorded post, you've at least got proof, but that's up to you. I've never had a problem. I am just going to stick it in the post box. I personally haven't included any supporting information, but that's a personal choice. I absolutely encourage you, if you've got evidence and supporting information, to include it. Don't forget to pop your national insurance number on anything that you send to them, just so they know it's yours and can keep a record of it all together. I would say when you're completing these renewal forms, like I said, you don't have to put as much detail because they've already had your previous applications and they've already got all of your previous information and answers. So this is kind of just literally what has changed since you last got your award. I would say be as detailed as you can. Always be honest. A little exaggeration is fine, but be honest. Don't tell lies. You will get caught out, and if you are caught out lying, you will likely lose the benefit completely. So it's just, I don't think it's worth it. Just be honest. Tell them how it affects you. And the other thing is, I would say some people can maybe feel a little bit funny about conditions and how things affect them. For example, I suffer from incontinence, bladder and bowel incontinence. It is no walk in the park, and it's disgusting, it's embarrassing, you don't like to talk about it, but it is what affects me, it affects my life, and it is very much part of my condition. So I have written about it, and I would encourage you to do the same. Even if you're embarrassed about things, I really encourage you just to be honest. Write it all down, write everything down, get it in that form, and you've got a much better chance of getting your reward again following a review. So that's it really. If you've got any questions, please drop them below. As we go through this review journey, I will keep you up to date. So if I have to have an assessment, I'll talk you through that, and I'll let you know when I get, if I get my award again, I'll let you know what I got and how they marked it. So look out for those vlogs in the future. They are saying at the moment it can take up to 12 weeks to get a decision, and as long as your paperwork is back with them by the deadline they gave you, they shouldn't stop your reward whilst it's under review, if that makes sense. So don't worry about that. Just make sure you get your paperwork back to them by the deadline they have stated. So yeah, that's it. Like I said, if you've got any questions, drop them down below. I'll do my best to answer them. I do have a couple of other videos on PIP which are a little bit out of date now, but still have some useful information in them, so I'll leave the links to those below. And that is it from me for today. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with another video.